Hey y'all, welcome to the country where it's just another day in paradise. Let's see what's going on. Hey y'all, this is Susan from Susan's Country Living, and welcome to the country. Welcome to my channel. If you like what you see today, be sure to subscribe, give me a thumbs up. Today we're going to be rendering beeswax. My husband Steven has some beeswax from a hive that we took out of a wall, and there's a video previously where we were taking that that hive out. So we have the wax. It's been in this Home Depot bucket with a lid on it. It stays good forever. So we're going to render it today and make us a block of beeswax so that we can use it for other things. So be sure to also check out my husband's channel, The Bearded Bee Man. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, to start the rendering process, you're going to need a pot, and whatever you choose to use, that's going to be your beeswax rendering pot, because it's really difficult to get it clean. The same thing with some sort of strainer. So what you're going to need is a pot, a strainer. You'll need some cheesecloth that we'll put in the strainer when we pour it through. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our beeswax and we're going to put it in the pot. I'm going to fill it up about, half full. And, there's still honey in there. And that honey's going to dissolve into the water so that all we get is beeswax. And there's grass, because we took this out of a house. And we laid the comb on the ground as we were doing that. That's full of honey, but we're not going to eat the honey from the wall of someone's house. But we will use the beeswax. Rendering is going to take all the impurities out. Any solid particles that are going to come out when we filter. Because what we're going to do is we're going to melt this beeswax in some water. So I'm going to add water. I've got it about half full. I could mash it down some because there's a lot of air space in there. So I think I'll mash it down and add some more because this thing is full. It's going to take several renderings to get all this done. Because it is a long process, but you're able to step away at certain times and go do something else. Alright, so now I'm going to put some water in my pot here. Just water from your tap. And I'm going to cover, I'm going to come up about to the level of the wax here, of the comb. I may add a few more. As we're going, I may add some more as it's melting, because this is going to melt down quite a bit. There's a lot of airspace. All those little cells. There's airspace in there. The water's going to go in there, and then as it melts, the wax will float to the top and the water will sink, because wax and water have different densities. And we're going to turn it on. Just going to let medium. Let me have the lid there in the sink, and to speed up the process, I'm just going to go ahead and put our lid on top there. And I'll check it in about 15 minutes to see where we are in the process and may add some more comb. Now, something else you're going to need is something to pour the mixture into, the melted wax and water. So I like to just use these disposable pans because they're going to get yucky. I double them just in case there is a little pinhole. I do hold them up to the light to see if there's a pinhole. And the wax is going to float to the top, like I said, and as it cools, the wax will solidify. And then we're going to take that wax off the top and do this process again. So don't prepare too much of this where you don't have enough containers. So I just keep these from things I've baked other things in them, and just wash them and keep them. But once you've done them, use them for rendering wax. they're not going to be good for anything else because that wax is extremely difficult to get off.
It's been just a little bit of time, and you can see that the water level has gone down. And so what we can do now is we can add some more beeswax to this rendering pot and maximize our rendering process. Amazing how much beeswax it takes just to make the bar that I showed you in the introduction. And so that gives you an idea as to why beeswax is so expensive to purchase that's been rendered. Not only does the process take a while, but it also takes a lot of beeswax or lots of honeycomb, I should say. Lots of honeycomb to make a beeswax bar. Yeah, there you go. So this is the beeswax here is melting, and you don't have the big chunks anymore. It's just kind of soupy right now. And so it'll continue to melt, and then before long we'll have it'll separate completely, and we'll strain it, of course, and have a nice clean. So this all of a sudden, once the wax gets to temperature, you can see there's not a lot of wax chunks in there. It's very viscous, and then what we'll do is we're going to strain it, and we'll have the first rendering of that beeswax.
Okay, so all our wax is melted, and we're going to now strain through this strainer, and I've lined it with a couple of layers of cheesecloth and use these binder clips to hold the cheesecloth on. That really helps a lot. So I'm just using a big empty can, and just makes it a little bit easier to manage rather than having to pour and it's going to filter all, see all that junk coming out? Just make sure you don't overflow the strainer there. And it'll get to where maybe it's so full it's not going through very fast, so just put another piece of cheesecloth in there. So we're going to filter all this and let it set, let it cool, and the wax will be solidified on the top and all the water will be in the pan. We'll dump the water out, put the wax back in the pot, add more water, and go through the process again.
So what we've done here now is we've rendered the beeswax for the first time. We turned everything into the crock pot into a liquid. We filtered it through this cheesecloth, and it got a lot of the impurities out. And so what's happening now is as it's cooling off, there's a separation that's taking place between the water and the wax, and the wax will sit up here on the top. And so once it solidifies, cools down and solidifies, we'll take the wax off of the top and we'll pour the water out. It'll be wasted. And so most of the wax is going to be in this pot, or in this pan right here, because it was the first part that came out of the crock pot there in the back. And so this is mostly just water. We'll see how much wax comes off of that. And so then we'll take that wax that we take off the top of this and we'll put it back into the pot, and we'll fill it with water again, we'll melt it down, we'll strain it again, and it'll be even purer, clearer, cleaner after that second rendering. It could take, you notice it's really dark right now, and so that's just a sign of impurities in the beeswax. The brighter it looks, the whiter it looks, the cleaner it's going to be. So here we are. You can see we have 3 pans of wax here. The wax is cooled and come together and hardened, and so we're going to take it out of this pan, and we're going to put it in this pan, and we're going to wash it off, and then we're going to go through this rendering phase one more time. And you can see that this is nice and yellow, clean looking. So our first rendering was really nice looking and clean. And so there's how thick the wax was on top of the water. Put it in there like that right there. Then we bring this pan, and this pan, the wax is really thin. Not much wax here at all. It's just a little thicker than a piece of paper.
The dark stuff that will wash off. It's just from the water. So we'll just kind of wash that off so it doesn't end up back in our water.
All right. So there we have it. A day's worth of, or morning's worth anyway, of rendering.
So we're gonna wash that, put it back in the pot, add the water.
Wash this, rinse this off really quick, just to get that dark stuff off, and then put it in our. We're just rinsing it off just like that. It's nice, and see how clean that is now. And so we're just getting all the dirt, so that it doesn't breaking it up.
So now we won't need as many pans as we did have. Probably just that one great big one. Takes more water to get out that first rendering.
So you see how dirty that is right there. You can see it
From the water.
Just from the water that it's been in. And
Not to let a lot of wax go down your sink. I'll flush it with some boiling water just to get any out through the P-trap.
This is the second rendering. We've put the wax in the bucket with covered it with water again, and we've melted it all down, and so we're rendering it. And this is going to go a lot faster than the first time. You notice it's a lot lighter color, not nearly as many impurities in the wax this time. So this is going to render out relatively quickly.
Filter.
Or filter. It's already been rendered. Depends on how many times you want to let the wax harden and melt and re-render. It'll get cleaner each time. But this is all really clean. So, and once again, the wax will sit on the top, and the water will be on the bottom, and we'll have a. Okay. There it is. And so there, now to clean this up, you just stick that in the oven, and because it's all melted, turn the oven on,
Take a paper towel.
and it'll all melt down to the bottom. Take a paper towel to the bottom of it, wipe it out, and it'll be ready to go next time.
And
You
do that
decide you want to render
Right
it.
now it's still hot, so it's coming out pretty easy. And it's not real dirty, so there's not much.
We're at the final steps now of having our wax, our beeswax. It was honeycomb this morning, and be a block of beeswax here before long. We're going to take this final rendering out, break these little chunks up of wax, and we're going to break them up. We're going to put them in this can, and we'll melt this can, and then melt the can. We'll melt the wax in the can, and then we'll transfer it to a form and let it sit up for the final time. So this will be fun. This is what we've been working toward all afternoon.
It's really thick. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Take a look at this. There it is, right there. Nice, thick piece of wax. Yeah, really cool. And the water below it is
Clear.
And
Clean.
so, really nice looking piece of wax we have
Here, let's just lay it
I'm just gonna
in that pan right there.
put it in the pan here and let it So we got quite a large piece of, here you go. I'm holding it. Still a little warm. But there's a nice sheet of wax right there. It's all pretty consistent, about a half an inch, between a quarter of an inch and a half inch wide.
It's probably a half inch.
And it's a
There you go. You want to lay it down there?
pretty big piece of wax right here. The biggest one I think we've done.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's pretty cool. So we're gonna
Just break it.
we're gonna break the wax up, and wow, nice chunk of beeswax right there, 100% beeswax right there. Just place the heat, spread the heat out a little bit, and so we've got some wax in there, and we'll start getting it warm, and it'll start melting, and it'll get to the melting point. Obviously, once it gets to the melting point, it'll start melting pretty quickly. And starting, we've got the beeswax here on the oven, on the stove rather, and we're melting it down. We've got the little bread pans all laced with some honey so that the beeswax doesn't stick to it, and we just wait. Everything takes a little time. Don't want to rush anything, but the wax is melting down, and we'll have it in the molds here in just a little bit. Okay, so here we are after a day of rendering our beeswax. We started with honeycomb this morning, and we've rendered it a couple of times, and now we have melted the wax, and we put it in these little bread loaf molds. And so here we have one of 3 bread loaf molds that we've completed today. And what we'll let this do is we'll let this harden, and it'll solidify overnight, and then we'll be able to take it out, and it'll hold the form of this bread mold right here. I don't believe there's anything else to be said about this. This is just a pretty neat thing for you to be able to do. It's something that your bees have built, and you're going to make good use of it. So remember, do your part. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us and ask, and we'll be quick to respond with that. Here we are. A day later, we've let this sit overnight, and we've taken the molds out of the little bread pans, and so you have about 3/4 of a pound of beeswax right here in this. So what we were able to render yesterday was almost 3 pounds of beeswax, about 2 3/4 pounds of beeswax right here. And so you get to see the final product. This is what all of our labor was toward. So remember, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe. This is Stephen, and I am the Bearded Bee Man.